Hi, my name's Amelia Kramer. I'm the owner here at Upwards Art Studio in downtown Owen Sound, Ontario, Canada. We are an art supply store as well as a teaching studio and my own studio. So we do classes for kids, teens, and adults. And then we are running product demos of things that we carry in the store. So lots of other YouTube videos are available for some other things. Uh, okay, so we're gonna demo GelliArts printing plates today. So I'm gonna switch cameras. Okay, so make sure this is okay. So jelly plates, GelliArts is, in my opinion, the best company for jelly plates. There are some other companies that make them. Speedball makes them, and there's one that's called like gel plates or something. They're all very similar. I find that these ones, they're easier to take care of. The paper comes off a lot easier. It's less likely to like rip your paper. Although if it does do that today, I'll show you how to manage that. I prefer these ones. That's why we stock these ones. So if you're not familiar, jelly plates come in a whole bunch of different sizes. So this what we're going to work with an 8x10 today. There's 6x6s. And then we have some huge ones. So this is 12x14. There's actually a bigger one, 16x20. When we order it, it sells out like almost immediately. So I just think I need to stock more than just the like 5 or 6 that we get. And then we also have class packs that we can order as well. These are great for teachers. This is what we use in our kids, actually our adult and kids classes. So we do this with kids as young as 5 years old. And they love it because it's fast, it's easy. You don't have to use oil-based products. And you learn a bit about printmaking at the same time. Okay, so a jelly plate. I've already registered my plate on here. This is bugging me. Okay, maybe that will work. Okay, so a jelly plate, I'll just pass it to you to feel it. So it's made of silicone. The GelliArts are made of a proprietary silicone. You can also make these yourself at home with gelatin. The problem is that gelatin will degrade pretty quickly. And you'll end up making them like every month or so, like if you're printing regularly. And I have a big crease on mine, so I just got to find a side that doesn't have the crease. So you can make them out of gelatin. These ones are nice and reusable, right? Like you don't have to really, you don't, if you take care of it, you don't need to replace it. It's going to be there probably forever. So it's soft and flexible, which is good because it takes the prints really well. This is driving me up the wall because I can hear myself in that and I'm not sure. Anyway, so it allows for multiple prints to be made pretty easily, really easy to clean. And I'll show you that. So it comes in the clamshell. So I would keep the clamshells because they're useful for storing and then they don't get warped. Not that it's going to warp, but like if it, you know, you put it on a bookshelf like this, then it might like start to be a bit wonky. And it comes with these acetate sheets. So when you put it away, you would put the sheet on the top and then flip it over, put the sheet on the bottom, and that just protects it from getting any damage. So on this sheet, I have this little crease because the sheet got damaged. And then on this side of my jelly plate, I have this wonky crease. So I always print on this side now. So not that it's a big deal. It's just the crease is going to show up in my printing. So take care of them. Wash the clean them at the end of the time at the end of your session. And as long as you're kind to them, they'll be kind to you. Okay. So I'm not going to do that. So what's nice about it is that it is immediate. You don't have to like sit there and carve something like a lino or, make a collagraph plate or an etching plate. This is like, you get it out, you get your paint out, your brayer, paint, just keep printing. So it's really fast. Which is really great for kids and people with short attention spans like me. Right. I need something that's like fast and not a lot of dry time and all those things. Okay, so the basic tools. So all you really need is a jelly plate, some acrylic paint. You can use some water-based print making inks as well. Acrylic paint is cheaper. It's widely available, right? So, and it's non-toxic. Not that the water-based printing inks are toxic, but these are, if you get them all over your hands, it's not really a big deal. Just go wash it off and it's going to come off pretty easily. You need a brayer. So that's the fancy word for a roller. Fancy. It's an art word for a brayer or for a roller. These ones with the like beige roller from Speedball, they're a soft brayer. I would recommend a soft brayer. There's sometimes that you would use a hard brayer, but that's for other printmaking stuff. I would always use a soft one because this is also soft. So if you put a hard one on it, it might leave, it's harder to roll out the paint. And I'm probably going to call the paint ink the whole time, but it's paint. Because I'm going to say things like inking your plate, which is just putting the acrylic paint on your plate. Okay, so the beige, when you're looking for a brayer, the beige ones, I'm going to use a 4-inch today. They come in 6 and 2, and I think there's like 12s. We don't stock the 12s, but we can order them. So I prefer something big enough that it's gonna, cover the plate in kind of 2 passes. So if I were to use, or less, right? If I were to use the 6-inch, I'd be okay with the 4, but I could go down to a 2. And then if I'm using the bigger one, like a 12 by 14, I would probably get a 6-inch just because, or the 16 by 20, just because you're going to be rolling out a lot. And I'm a bit lazy. Not a bit. Okay. And then there's you need some paper to print on. So we're going to print on regular printer paper. So this is just from, Staples or wherever that you get your printer paper from. We're going to print on some cardstock for our good copies, or not good copies. So cardstock, it again, just from Staples in the big pack. And then we're going to do some rice paper. So this is cut from larger sheets. So rice paper, it's not really made of rice. A washi paper. So it's very fine fibers that are made into a paper. In the store, we have them like a pad that's like 12 by 16 or something. I can't remember. And then a smaller letter size pad, and then we have a roll. So this is the kind of paper, if I were going to mount it for encaustic, that I would use. Everything else I use for like mixed media or making cards or something like that. The encaustic, I don't know, you know how to paint with encaustic.
Well, I did it once.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So encaustic, we know, doesn't really like acrylic. So when you print for encaustic, you really need to print like 3 or 4 layers max, because the wax needs to absorb into the paper. And if we have too many layers of acrylic paint, then it's all just going to be plastic. So it just really needs to be able to sink in to something. So that's a side note that was probably later on in my talking notes. But anyway. Okay. And then if you choose to, you can use some tools. So I have some color shapers. This is actually for like applying foundation or something. A a baster, like a silicone baster. Oh, that's a color shaper. I'm going to use some of these catalyst, Princeton catalyst tools. So they make these long ones on handles, and then they make these little, these smaller ones. They actually make a hard plastic as well. I wouldn't use anything that's metal, obviously, because that will scratch your plate, and then you have a big scratch in your plate, and all your prints will end up with that big scratch. Okay, so we'll use those. And then I also make some tools of my own. Well, not this. So that's from the dollar store. It's some sort of like Trivety hot mitt thing that's made out of silicone. So anything that's like really heat, no, we're talking about acrylic. It doesn't need to be heat resistant. Anything that that you can use to make a mark. So this one, it's a hard roll, probably from like parchment paper rolls. And I hot glued some string around it. So that leaves a funky design. I have some like kitchen sponges. This one I made as well. So it's corrugated cardboard that I put over a box so I can easily stamp it. Some sort of netting from vegetables or an onion or whatever. You can see that on the video. Some netting, and then kitchen, like shelf liner as well. So anything that really has texture, excuse me, in it will work. And if it is something that you can clean off, that's maybe better, but sometimes you don't care, right? Sometimes you're like, you know what? This came with my onions. I don't really like, I'm not going to use it for anything else. So maybe I don't care. And like shelf liner, if you've done your shelves and you got this extra stuff around,
Yeah.
right? Like it's extra. So yeah. And if you order stuff, there's corrugated cardboard everywhere. And okay. And then you need acrylic paint or some other water soluble printing ink. You can use oil-based ones if you really choose to, but oil-based is very hard to clean up. It has solvents in it. It's kind of stinky. You need some ventilation. Yeah. If you choose to, that's an option.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to be not a lot of work. Right? The whole idea of this is you didn't carve your plate. You didn't do all of this extra work. So let's just go to it. Okay, so I'm gonna finally pull a print. So I'm gonna get my paper ready beside me, get my paints in front of me. So I'm just gonna use like a limited palette. And move that stuff over. Excuse me. Okay, so I've registered my plate already. Registering means that you mark where your plate is and then where your paper goes. So every time that you lay your paper down, it's going to lay over the same way. So in the classes, we show you how to do that. There might be a video on YouTube that I put. No, there's a blog post for sure on how to do it on our site. Anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna not bother about that. So I'm gonna put just like maybe the size. You can I tell the kids like the size of a dime, because then when they squeeze, it comes out like the size of a quarter. So you don't want very much, and you don't need very much, and you can always add more if you want to. Okay, so for strategies for putting the paint on. So this, if you roll back and forth, which is what everybody wants to do, you can see that the paint isn't going everywhere. So if I always roll in the same direction, it's going to fill the rest of the plate. So when you're printing anything, really, like even if you're inking a different kind of plate, choosing what way you're going to roll your brayer and just keep going over and over and over in that direction. So that's all nice and coated, right? So I'm going to keep going in the same direction. I generally don't clean my brayer as I go, maybe later when it starts to get really mucky. Okay, so similar to other printmaking, I'm just going to make sure I got the corner or the edge there. Similar with other printmaking, it's going to be reverse. So if I ever like use a wipeout tool to write a word, it's going to be in reverse. So we can do that later. Okay. So I'm going to just take this print. Generally, we print in layers. So generally, this is going to be like, because I print in layers, some other people just like load their plate in layers. This is going to be my background. So I'm going to put my paper down in a U. I know the video can't see this, but you can see that. Touch down and then just let the sides go. And you don't need another tool to get the ink or the paint off. Your hand is just enough. You don't need to like have a clean brayer or anything. And I'm just going to rub it and then pick it up. And then, so that's that print. And I'm just going to set it aside. Actually, for workshops, we have a clothesline that goes across, so it's retractable. So everybody just hangs their prints on that as we go. If this is still wet, I might be able to take another print. So that's a ghost print. And I might have to rub a little bit harder this time. Okay. And that will pick up the rest of the paint that's on my plate. So again, that's a background. So when you're printing, it's really, right, like that's fast. This is almost dry because the paint was almost dry on there anyway. So I could just, I'm going to print on that again, I think. Yeah, because I don't want to make a whole bunch of prints. We'll make, okay, anyway, I'm not sure what I'm saying. Okay, so let's choose a different color. Let's just use this gold. Oh, excuse me. And we got a dirty brayer. Let's just go to town with it. So I can use my brayer to like make different designs, right? I don't need to roll it right out. I kind of like those like dotty things that the brayer does. And then I line up my paper again in a U, drop it down. So if I were to like move it right now, then it's going to move the paint around and it's not going to look super fabulous. You can do that, but try to touch down and let it go, and just go with it, right? If it's slightly off, nobody really cares, or I don't really care. So now I have some layers over top of my existing layers. And that one dry, that one's pretty dry. Might try to pick up some of this. I didn't drop it in the right spot, that's okay. Try to pick up some of this paint that's down there. So I'm rubbing harder this time because there's a ghost. And you can always peek, right? Yeah, some of it's being left on the plate, but you can always peek and go back and rub some more. If you want all of the paint to come off the plate, then I would sit and leave this to dry. So right now it feels a bit cool to the touch. It feels like a bit like damp paper. So as soon as it goes like, feels like normal dry paper, then you can lift it and just be, it's going to stick a little bit, but just go slow with it and it will pick it up. So now I have these like goldy things. And generally when you're working with a limited palette. So you end up at the end of the day with prints that somewhat go together because you've been using the same color palette. The other thing I do is to have a piece of scrap paper. I'm just going to put it on this. You don't need to put it on that. And roll off my brayer. If I'm like, you know what, that's getting a little muddy. And then I end up with, collage paper that's just slightly like very ethereal, right? So, okay, so now we've got some prints. We can also, so let's do a stencil and a mask. So, oops. So my brayer I rolled off, right? So it's fairly cleanish. It might be a little dirty, but again, not something that I'm too concerned about. I'm always rolling the brayer. Even when I go this way, I'm still rolling it away from myself or from, right? I'm always rolling it forward. That's what I'm trying to say. And you might get these lines. It's just a matter of being really light with your brayer. You don't have to press down at all. Yeah, you don't have to press down at all. It's not like inking other plates like a block where you kind of have to push. This is like nice. You don't need any muscle, which is cool for me. Okay, so you can, oh, I didn't get a commercially made stencil. Okay, so you can make your own stencils or use a commercially made one. So this is one that I cut out of cardstock. So I just put it on a self-healing mat with an X-Acto. If you want to, you can draw out your design beforehand. I'm not an artist that does that, right? So, and then this is the stencil, and then the stuff that you cut out is masks. That's the art jargon for that kind of stuff. So when you see them commercially made, if it says it's a stencil, then you're going to get what's inside the lines, and if it's a mask, then you're going to get what's outside of the line. That makes sense? Okay, so it becomes very obvious at this. So this one is on letter, so it's 8.5 by 11, which is our printing paper, but my plate is an 8 by 10. So I'm gonna go slightly off the page. That's just for, oops. Let me just fix that because I threw my finger in it. Forget what I was saying. Which is
You're going slightly off the page.
Yeah, I'm going slightly off the page just for like that's only for composition, like if you really care about that, which a lot of people don't. And anyway, okay, so I'm gonna grab a print. It's mostly dry. I'm gonna line it up where I think I want it. I can use my registration marks again, but you can just put the paper wherever the heck you want, right? You don't have to keep it the same way every time. So let's go on a crazy angle. And then I'm just going to rub where my cuts are, because the paint's only going to come up through those spots because I blocked it out with the cardstock. Okay, and I can peek again. Did I get all of them? So now I have this design on my print, right? That's from my stencil. Again, the stencils, it's going to be reversed. Something that's really cool is if you take your stencil off, put on a new one, I'm going to be able to pick up these like hard lines that might take a little bit of rubbing. Oh, this is what I do in a class. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. But in a class, you get to try it and we get to experiment, right? So, okay, so I'm really pressing hard to try to get that extra paint. So now I have, right, these like really ghostly shapes. And sometimes you just print this on some like piece of junk paper that you're like, oh, I'm just going to use this to like unload my brayer to do all these things, like all these like junky things. And then you print this. This is your good thing, right? You're printing garbage, not garbage, but you're printing something else in order to get something like this, right? Okay. My plate's a little dirty. We'll see if any of this comes up. Probably not. Not really. That's okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, not really. So once you start printing on your stencil, it's going to become very like beautiful. And maybe you want to use that for collage paper later on because they get really yummy, especially when you start putting like layered colors on them. This white that's on here is not going to come off on something else like the white paint because I'm likely going to use it this way again. Even if I did want to use it this way, it's not really going to come off because it's sunk into the paper. That makes sense. And then a mask would just do the opposite. Let me just get a color that will show up on this one. just so that you can like visually see the difference. Oops. Okay. I think every time I put it down, I say oops because I
Always
think I put more than I wanted. Okay, and we'll just do the whole thing pink so that it's very obvious what a mask does instead of a stencil. And I do have that white paint on there so that the pink might reactivate it and it might come off. So again, making my shapes go off the edge, but that's just a composition thing. You don't have to do that. Especially if you're going to use it for collage paper. Like this is more for like if I were to do a print that's like actually that I wanted the whole thing to be a composition. Okay, so somewhat flower-like, but not really. Okay, I'm just going to touch that down a little bit just because they're kind of lifting at the edges. Okay. And then I'm going to put my paper down and rub again. Maybe I don't need to rub as much this time. Because I like if you don't want all of the paint to go on, then don't rub as hard. So that's what a mask does, right? It fills in the information around your shape. I have pink paint on me. So now I can lift these and they're going to get beautiful if I keep printing with them. Oops. If I had some silicone tweezers, I'd probably use them so that I'm not getting my fingers in the paint. Because that like I just took off some of the paint there. But I'm not a very clean artist. Okay, so let's try to put that on this. And that pink might have dried a little bit, so I'm gonna rub a bit harder. Now this is getting a little out of control. Right? It's getting a little like a little hard to look at. But again, like for collage, like maybe just like this little yummy bit, right? So anyway, okay. So you can also make textures in it. So let's use this gold. Maybe a bit of this blue. And we'll start a new piece of paper. And I've got pink on here, so I'm gonna get some purple somewhere, maybe. Although as soon as I said that, it didn't happen. Got some green for sure. So I've got some pink dried on there and some white dried on there. Again, this new paint might help to lift that later on. And I can use my homemade tools, stamp that. I could just like wipe it around. That wasn't very cool looking, but this will add some texture like you're sponging, the walls in you're painting your homes and like the 80s and 90s. So if I write a word, actually, let's just get rid of some of this. And if I write a word with a wipeout tool, if I write love this way, it's going to be backwards. And I can just clean up that E. It'll show you that it will be backward. I know that you're like, okay, that's I get it, but because this is something that kids do a lot, that they want to write stuff in it. So I have them write it on another piece of paper, go to a window, turn it over and trace it. And then they're just copying how the lines move. Okay. So, yeah. So they're not trying to figure out how the letters go backwards, right? Because like R's and D's and E's, like they inevitably one is going to be the wrong way around.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Okay. So, right. So love is now backwards love, which should be okay.
That could be its own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have some of the marks from that cardboard stuff, the wipeout tool saying whatever that would say. I don't know what an E backwards would sound like. And then maybe I can pick that up. And something else, even though love is spelled backwards, we don't care. And it might be dry a little bit, so I'm just gonna rub a bit harder. So it's really like printing and over printing, and you'll get some that are really cool, and then others that you're like, you know what, that's going in my collage bin. That's cool, but that's collage. Okay, so once especially for kids and adults too, once we figure out how that layering happens, then we switch to a card stock. Especially if you want to print something that's print like that you can frame. Right. So learning the basics first and realizing that what you print first is going to be in your background, because that's kind of a learning curve for everyone, no matter your age, unless you're a printmaker. Right. So right. So that's a bit of a learning curve. I'm just gonna wipe off this sprayer on something. I don't want the acrylic to dry, because then it makes it like on my brayer anywhere really. Well, the plate's okay. But the brayer, it starts to get hard to clean. So I just clean it as I go. Yeah, so knowing how to compose a print, then you would go to your nice paper. But that's only if you wanted to frame something. So I don't think I'm going to print on the cardstock. I don't know. I don't think we really have time for that, but that's the idea. Cardstock is also used for stencils, of course, right? Of your own stencils. You can use commercially made. I like these ones because they absorb the paint a little bit, so it doesn't get all mucky and accidentally slide around. Okay. Oh, look, I did all of those things as well. Okay. So rice paper is the same idea. It's just I would likely spot print with the rice paper more often. In my case, the rice paper is quite big, so I might just like print, like put a little bit of paint down somewhere. See, I got a little bit that time. And if I had other stuff on the background, could just like print that. And the rice paper has kind of a smooth side and a texture side, doesn't really matter. And you'll be able to see that this absorbs right into the paper, and you'll be able to see it better. But your prints are really not fragile because it's hard to rip rice paper. You actually usually wet it before you rip it. Um, just that it's lighter, right? So if you go to frame it, you'll probably want a piece of white paper or something behind it, because once you start layering, like you might have some, like if you just had cardboard in behind, I know the video can't see that. You just had cardboard in behind and you had white rice paper, then you'd be able to see that cardboard or backing board. Okay, it's a lot of, I'm getting a lot of papers, but it's really not that many papers for this. And then I'm gonna maybe try to spot print that because it's just there. Oh, I should have done it on that one. Oh, well. Came up a little bit, but not a ton. So like this spot. Okay. What else was I gonna do? Oh, GelliArts makes these like little printing things. I think they call them shapes or something. So they come in, I think we have circles and rectangles and triangles. If you buy the class set, they also come with hexagons. Okay, so these can be put, like these can be used as a plate it's by itself. They can also be put on your plate so that they don't move around, and you can put them like in a design. Maybe you want, that's going to look like something else. Maybe I don't use that one. Maybe we just use one of each. And I can ink them different colors if I want to, right? Or I could just ink them all the same. I could, it's gonna be really light because I'm running out of paint on there. And then I can use my tools, right? If I paint on that one. Use these catalyst tools. These ones are cool because you can use the short end or you can use the long end. This paint is really dry. Okay, so let's put it on something. So I just need to rub where the shapes are. These are nice, like travel-y things so that if you're like, oh, like if you have a bigger plate and you're like, oh, I'm going to a hotel and maybe I just want to print a little bit. So you'd bring like your small tubes of acrylic. And so now I have these like big shapes on it, and some of them have some texture. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, so I'm gonna clean everything. What's going over there? You start to have a big mess, as you can see, of like papers, and I know the video can't see, but like papers and all this kind of stuff laying around. Okay, so to clean, I use baby wipes because baby wipes are an artist's best friend. They clean up acrylic paint like no other because they've got a little bit of alcohol in them. Uh, uh, yeah, and if you buy the cotton ones, then they're obviously better for the environment. Oops, this one's still stuck on here. So I just, at the end of my session, or if I'm gonna go to lunch, just so my paint doesn't completely dry on there, I'm just gonna wipe them with the baby wipe on one side, then flip them over and wipe them with that on that side. So when you get printing, you might start having paint all over your printing. So I just have newsprint under here just to protect my table, but also so that I don't get all this other junk that's coming through that's on my table. Not coming through, but it would like, it's like having, this underneath your printing plate and going, is that is it going to do what I think it's going to do?
Yeah.
Right. It kind of gives you this blank canvas, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Right. So just having a piece of newsprint or something that doesn't have a lot of design, like a roll of, the kids print, like painting paper that comes in the big rolls and stuff like that. Just something that keeps it clean. And then, so where I was going with that was that when you clean up, if you have a bunch of paint on this, it's easier to just take this away and get a new one, because we're going to want to flip this over as well. And if we flip it into paint that might be a little wet, then it's going to get dirty again. Okay, so I have it that way. I put one of the sheets on, one of the acetate sheets on, and then I put the other one on the other side, and that's ready to be stored. Okay, so we'll do this as well. So on these ones, it starts to collect around the edges. So if you get it right away, then it's going to come off. Some of our class set starts to, sometimes it's kids cleaning them, not sometimes, it's often kids cleaning them. And we try to go back and clean them, but if, the class ends at 6 and we close at 6, we'll just, leave it. So we get them to clean off the top really well. And then there are some kids that are very particular. So they clean off their edges really well. But then we have others that are like, oh no, it's clean and it looks like this. Right. So and I'm just getting off all those like bigger chunks. And if you need a new wipe because you're just getting a little dry. There's a lot of watching me wipe a plate.
Be experts at it.
Yeah.
When the time comes.
Yeah, so just getting that clean. And then I'm gonna move these out of the way. And I'm gonna flip it over to this side and just make sure that I don't have chunks of something. And then this side really isn't that dirty, but if I had been rolling a whole bunch of paint, it might get a little bit dirty. Okay, and then this is my side with that weird crease because I wrecked my plate. So I'm gonna find my acetate with the mark in it that wrecked my plate, or that side of my plate, and then I'm gonna flip it over and put the nice acetate on the other side. And if your acetate gets dirty, try to clean it with a wipe like that day. This one's a little dirty and I was trying to clean it before the video yesterday, but didn't happen. And then you store it in your clamshell. So we'll just put that to the side. Wipes can also be used for your brayers. If your brayers start to get like really chunky, I would put them in a little dish with some Murphy's oil soap and water. But if you get them right away, oops, then you can just wipe them with a baby wipe. So I feel like this is an easy cleanup too. I'm one that doesn't like to clean up things. I'm okay with this, but like sitting and getting my hands wet at the sink is kind of a thing that grosses me out, which is kind of weird, but yeah. Okay. That was a lot of information for a YouTube video about me. And then on the brayers as well, I try to clean up this like edge because the paint can really build up in there. So just trying to clean out acrylic paint before it dries is really the best idea because otherwise you're sitting and letting it soak for a day or two. I'm being very particular about the edges right now because this one was clean to begin, not super clean, but the edges were nice and clean to begin with. Okay, so that's pretty good. Oh, and when you're printing, it's probably off camera, but my brayer is always with the roller up. That way, because it's acrylic paint and dries super fast, if you're like, oh, if it's this way and you're like, oh, I got a phone call, I gotta just answer this right now. In the like 5 minutes that your phone, or if you're on like telemarketing and the bank phones and you're like, oh, get me off of here, it could be like half an hour, right? So once this dries, it's gonna stick to the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna pull it up and there's gonna be a whole rip of paper on it that you'll have to go to the sink and like soak and find another brayer for right now. So just leaving it upright. Anytime that you're using a brayer, really, that's how you put them on the table. Even with oil-based stuff that doesn't take a long time to dry, just leaving them with the roller upright. That was a lot of repeating the same things. And then I also clean my silicone tools while the paint is wet. If it dries, you can just like peel it off. But like I'd rather have my tools dry or clean for the next person, even if I'm the next person. Okay. So just using wipes. Again, if you get the cotton ones, you can use them with as encaustic collage. If you get the like these are just the regular ones, so they have a bit of plastic in them. You can still like lay them out to dry and then they can be collaged into a mixed media that doesn't have the wax. And you can cut out shapes. They're kind of like using dryer sheets and stuff. But so now that I cleaned everything up and everything's away, do you have any questions?
That's a great introduction.
Mhm.
Good.
How much do these plates run, like this size?
I don't know. I never know that. Yeah, they're in the store.
Yeah.
Our store is also online, so if you're watching from further away, we do ship worldwide. Oh, I was gonna say how to like if your paper is sticking to the plate and it's not like it's ripping when it comes off and part of it is like it's ripping and part of your paper can't get off and it's stuck on there.
Mhm.
You can clean it with your wipe and then with a tiny bit of baby oil. I don't know why baby oil is so hard to open. Okay, so on mine, for art, I just poke a little hole in that seal tab. So I don't get like a whole bunch of it because I'm not putting it in my bath. I'm generally cleaning stuff in the studio. So I just need about the size of a quarter and then put the broken lid. Maybe that's why it's so hard to open. Okay. And then I'm gonna use some paper towel and just kind of lightly rub it around. I don't want it too oily, but I don't want it right, and it does take off some of the paint that's on there too. So I want some oil on it, but like I don't want to use a wipe because the wipe's good, like the baby wipe is going to take all the oil away. So I want some oil to still be on the plate, and that just makes it it kind of fixes your plate if the paper starts to really stick to them. Again find these ones doesn't really happen as much as the other brands. Okay, we're gonna just put that back on top. Okay. Anything else that I already any other questions? So we are running a full workshop in like 2 weeks. I think it's during the day though. But we do run them regular. Oh, I gotta clean these ones. We do run them regularly, so just keep an eye on the schedule. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna switch back cameras. Maybe, where's my mouse? There it is. Okay, so that was jelly plate printing with the GelliArts plates. So we are, like I said, we are a brick and mortar store in Owen Sound, Ontario, Canada. We also have a website where you can order any of this stuff, upwardsartstudio.com. And I will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe because that's what everybody says at the end of a YouTube. Bye.